I've spent nearly 20 years on the road as a long-haul trucker, cruising through endless highways, lonely back roads, and the heart of every town along the way. Most nights it's peaceful, just me and the hum of the engine, with a few fellow truckers chatting on the CB, sharing news or the occasional ghost story. I've heard a lot of tales over the years, but it wasn't until one fateful night on Highway 54 that I experienced something that would change my life forever. It started like any other run. I was hauling a load of electronics from California to Denver, and I'd made decent time. It was late October, and the crisp autumn air filled the cab as I drove through the Sierra Nevada mountains. The leaves were vibrant shades of orange and red, but the beauty of it all felt distant, like I was living in a postcard rather than the real thing. After a long day on the road, I was tired, but determined to make it to my destination by dawn. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the sky darkened quickly, and the first chill of the night settled in. I passed a few rest areas, but something in my gut told me to keep going. I had enough energy drinks and coffee to fuel a small army, so I felt I could manage a few more hours. After all, the mountains were notorious for fog and tricky driving conditions, and I wanted to get through them before the weather turned. Just before midnight, I hit a stretch of road where the trees began to close in on both sides, creating a tunnel of shadows. That's when I first noticed the fog rolling in. It came in thick, swallowing the road ahead. I turned on my headlights and squinted through the haze. The world outside became a blur, and my heart rate quickened as I focused on the road. I felt as if the fog had a mind of its own, wrapping around my truck like a shroud. Then, my CB radio crackled to life, shattering the silence. "Breaker, breaker, anyone out there?" A voice called out, crackling with static. "Long haul 24 here. What's your 20?" I responded, relieved to hear another human voice. "Out on Highway 54, just past the old gas station. You in the fog?" The voice was tense, almost frantic. "Yeah, I'm just coming up on it," I replied, glancing at my GPS. "Looks like it's getting pretty thick." "Stay alert, man. I just saw something. Something in the fog," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I don't know what it was, but it was watching me. I shrugged it off. Probably just a deer or something. You know how it is out here. No, this was different. I swear, it had eyes. "I'm pulling off at the next exit. You should too." I chuckled lightly, but inside, a sense of unease was creeping over me. I'd seen my share of strange things on the road, but this guy sounded genuinely scared. "All right, man. Take care out there." I continued down the highway, the fog thickening with every mile. The trees became indistinct shapes, looming specters in the dark, and I felt a growing sense of isolation. The world outside faded into an abyss of swirling gray. Suddenly, my headlights illuminated something ahead, a flicker of movement in the fog. My heart dropped as I squinted to see what it was. Then I saw it, a figure standing in the middle of the road. I slammed on the brakes, my tires screeching as I skidded to a stop just inches away from the figure. My breath hitched in my throat as I leaned closer to the windshield, my heart pounding in my chest. It was a woman, dressed in a tattered white dress that fluttered in the breeze. Her hair hung long and tangled, framing a face that seemed almost ethereal. But her eyes, they were hollow, devoid of life, black pits that seemed to absorb the light. I didn't know what to do. Should I help her? Was she in trouble? But something inside me screamed to keep my distance. I couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't real, that she was some sort of mirage conjured by the fog. "Are you okay?" I called out, my voice shaky. She didn't respond. Instead, she began to walk toward me, her movements slow and deliberate, I felt an overwhelming urge to drive away, to escape this strange encounter, but my body felt frozen. Then she raised her hand, pointing directly at me. I hit the gas and peeled away, heart racing as I tried to shake off the encounter. I glanced in the rearview mirror, expecting to see her standing there, but she had vanished, swallowed by the fog. I kept driving, the voice on the CB echoing in my mind. Something was watching me. I needed to clear my head, so I flipped on the radio, trying to drown out my thoughts with music. But the radio was dead, static filling the air as I pressed the buttons in frustration. Then the voice came back over the CB, sounding more urgent than before. "Long Haul 24, are you there? I think it's coming for me." I grabbed the mic. "I'm still here. What's going on? Are you all right?" "Get off the highway," he shouted. "It's not safe. I can see it. It's got..." The transmission cut out suddenly, leaving me alone in my cab, the eerie silence pressing in on me. I gripped the wheel tightly, my knuckles white. Whatever was out there, it felt closer now. I drove on, eyes scanning the road, the trees blurring past me in the fog. The fear was palpable, wrapping around me like the thick mist. I just wanted to get through this stretch and find a safe place to stop. But the more I drove, the more I felt like I was losing my mind. The shadows seemed to dance just beyond my headlights, and the air felt charged, electric with an unseen presence. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I caught another glimpse of the woman. She was back, standing by the side of the road, her long hair cascading down her shoulders like a veil. I blinked, and she was gone. Just a figment of my imagination, or something more sinister. I pressed on, adrenaline coursing through my veins. The further I drove, the more frantic I felt. I wanted to believe it was just fatigue playing tricks on me, but the memory of her hollow eyes haunted me. Then, I spotted a flicker of light ahead, the faint glow of a rest area sign. Relief washed over me, and I made the turn, pulling into the lot. The rest area was deserted, the lights flickering ominously. I parked my rig and stepped outside, taking a moment to gather myself. The air was crisp, the silence almost deafening. I lit a cigarette, hoping it would calm my nerves, but instead, I felt more on edge. I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. As I stood there, the hairs on the back of my neck prickled, and I turned, scanning the trees at the edge of the lot. That's when I saw it again. The woman, standing among the shadows watching me. Her eyes glinted like obsidian, and I felt a chill race down my spine. "Hey," I shouted, my voice echoing in the stillness. "What do you want?" She didn't respond. Instead, she stepped forward, the fog swirling around her like a veil. I stumbled back, my heart pounding as I fumbled for my phone. But the screen was dead, no signal, nothing but a black void. Panic surged through me as I turned to my truck, desperate to escape. But before I could move, she raised her hand, pointing at me again. I froze, the fear paralyzing. I couldn't look away from her face, the way it seemed to shift and change in the dim light. The longer I stared, the more I felt myself being drawn in, like I was caught in a trance. Suddenly, the sound of my CB crackled again, breaking the spell. "Long Haul 24, come in. You need to get out of there." I blinked, the voice jolting me back to reality. "I'm here. I'm at the rest area. What's happening?" "There's something wrong with that woman," the voice shouted. "She's not what she seems. You need to get back in your truck and leave now." Before I could respond, the woman lunged forward, her movements fluid and unnatural. I turned and sprinted toward my rig, my heart racing. I could hear her footsteps behind me, swift and silent, and I jumped into the cab, slamming the door shut. I fumbled with the ignition, panic rising as I tried to start the engine. Come on, I muttered, glancing in the mirror. She was standing just outside, her expression unreadable, a ghostly silhouette against the fog. I finally managed to turn the engine over, the rumble of the diesel filling the air. I hit the gas, feeling the truck lurch forward as I tore out of the parking lot, the tires screeching on the asphalt. As I sped down the highway, I could see her in the rearview mirror, standing still, watching me disappear into the night. The fear subsided slightly, replaced by a growing sense of urgency. I couldn't stop now. I needed to get far away from that rest area, from her. I pushed the truck harder, feeling the speedometer climb as I drove deeper into the fog. The world outside became a blur, the darkness swallowing everything around me. But the sense of dread never left. It clung to me like a shroud, whispering in the back of my mind. After what felt like hours, I finally spotted another rest area ahead, a real one, with a few flickering lights and the silhouettes of other trucks. I pulled in, desperate for some kind of human connection. Maybe talking to someone would help me shake off the feeling of paranoia that had settled over me. As I parked, I stepped outside and took a deep breath, hoping the fresh air would clear my head. The lot was mostly empty, just a couple of other trucks and a few drivers milling around. I approached a group of truckers standing by the building, their faces drawn and tired. "Hey, you guys seen anything strange out here?" I asked, my voice strained. They exchanged glances, and one of them, an older guy with a scruffy beard, nodded slowly. "You're not the first to mention it. That fog has a way of messing with your mind." I frowned. "What do you mean?" "There's a legend about this stretch of road," he said, leaning closer. "People have seen things out there. The woman in white. They say she lures drivers into the fog, and once you're in, you can't escape." My heart sank. I didn't want to believe it, but the fear I felt was all too real. "What happens to them?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Some say they disappear. Others, they come back. But they're never the same. Just hollow shells of who they used to be." He glanced back toward the road, his expression serious. "You're lucky to have gotten away." I backed away from the group, my mind racing. I felt sick, the weight of their words heavy on my chest. I just wanted to leave. I needed to get back on the road. As I climbed back into my truck, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me. I started the engine and pulled back onto the highway, determined to put as much distance between me and that cursed fog as possible. But deep down, I knew the truth. I wasn't free. Whatever was out there was still lurking, waiting for the right moment to strike. The miles rolled by, and the night wore on. I kept my eyes glued to the road, trying to distract myself from the thoughts racing in my mind. But the shadows seemed to dance in the corners of my vision, and the fog crept back in, wrapping around me like a familiar embrace. Just as I thought I could breathe again, I caught a glimpse of something in the rearview mirror. Another truck behind me, its headlights piercing the darkness. My heart raced as I turned to look, but the fog obscured my view. I leaned closer, trying to make out the silhouette. Then it happened. A figure appeared, standing in the middle of the road, just like before. I slammed on the brakes, panic rising as I fought to regain control. But it wasn't just the woman. There were more figures, shadows moving in the fog, their forms indistinct and menacing. I could see them now, darting through the mist, circling my truck like predators closing in on their prey. "Get out! Get out!" I screamed, my voice echoing in the cab as I fought to start the engine again. The shadows pressed closer, their whispers rising in a cacophony that filled the air. "Help us! Join us! Don't leave!" I was trapped, surrounded by their voices. My heart pounded in my chest as I fought to escape, my hands shaking as I fumbled with the keys. The engine sputtered and died, leaving me in darkness, my breath quickening as the shadows closed in around me. Then, just as I thought it was over, the headlights of the truck behind me flickered, illuminating the figures for a brief moment. I saw their faces, hollow eyes, gaunt features, mouths stretched into eerie smiles. They weren't just shadows. They were lost souls, caught between worlds. "Help us," one of them pleaded, reaching out with a skeletal hand. I couldn't take it anymore. I lunged for the door, throwing it open and stumbling out into the fog. I ran, my heart racing, desperate to escape their grasp. The voices rose around me, growing louder, pulling me back. I felt their cold hands brushing against my skin, urging me to join them. "Don't go," they cried. "Stay with us." But I couldn't. I forced myself to keep moving, running through the darkness until I saw a glimmer of light ahead. It was the rest area, the same one I had just left. I sprinted toward it, praying that if I could reach the safety of the lights, I could escape this nightmare. I burst into the lot, panting and gasping for breath. The truckers looked up, surprised at my sudden appearance. I stumbled toward them, my hands shaking. "Get in your trucks," I shouted. "We need to leave." They looked at me, confusion etched on their faces. "What happened?" one asked, stepping forward. "There's something out there. We can't stay here." I was frantic, my words tumbling out in a rush. But before they could respond, I heard the whispers again, coming from the trees at the edge of the lot. The shadows emerged, breaking through the fog like predators hunting their prey. The truckers stared in horror, and I felt a cold chill sweep through me. "Get inside, now," I screamed, turning to run back to my truck. I fumbled with the door, my hands trembling as I jumped into the cab. I could see the figures now, their faces twisted into ghastly expressions, their hollow eyes fixed on me. The other truckers finally sprang into action, scrambling to their trucks as the shadows closed in. Just as I started my engine, the headlights flickered to life, illuminating the chaos. The figures recoiled from the light, but not before I saw their faces one last time. Twisted, haunted, pleading. "Don't leave us," they wailed, their voices echoing in my mind. But I had to go. I slammed the gear into drive and sped out of the lot, the shadows fading behind me as I tore down the highway. I didn't look back, my heart racing as I focused on the road ahead, the fog slowly lifting. I drove for hours, the sun finally rising in the distance. The sky turned a beautiful shade of orange, but the beauty of it felt tainted, like a reminder of the horrors I had just escaped. I was exhausted, my mind racing with everything I had witnessed, and as I pulled into a diner for a much-needed meal, I couldn't shake the feeling of dread that lingered in my chest. I sat at the counter, nursing a cup of coffee as the waitress gave me a concerned look. I could see the other truckers whispering among themselves, their eyes darting in my direction. I felt like an outsider, like I was still trapped in the fog, surrounded by shadows. Then, the CB crackled to life again. "Long Haul 24, are you there?" I grabbed the mic, my heart racing. "I'm here. Did you make it out? We heard about what happened out there." I nodded, my throat tight. "Yeah, but not without a price. There's something out there, something that wants to take you. You can't let it." The voice on the other end went silent for a moment. "We'll spread the word. Stay safe out there." As the sun rose higher in the sky, I realized that the shadows wouldn't just disappear. They were out there, lurking in the fog, waiting for their next victim. I was just one of many who had escaped, but I knew the truth. I would never truly be free. I finished my coffee, my hands still shaking, and stepped outside. The air felt different now, heavy with a sense of foreboding. I climbed back into my rig, knowing I would always be looking over my shoulder, always wondering when the fog would return. The road stretched out before me, and I took a deep breath, steeling myself for whatever lay ahead. The world was vast, filled with endless highways and hidden dangers, but I was a long-haul trucker. I knew how to keep moving. So I drove on, keeping my eyes on the road, my heart heavy with the weight of the shadows that would always follow me. Because in the end, the road never truly ends. It just leads you deeper into the darkness. My name is Jake Miller, and I've been a long-haul trucker for over 15 years. I've seen my fair share of strange sights and met a variety of interesting characters along the highways of America. But nothing could prepare me for what happened one fateful night in the middle of nowhere, in the heart of Texas. It was a chilly October evening, and I was driving a full load of electronics from Los Angeles to Dallas. The highway was lonely, illuminated only by my truck's headlights and the occasional flickering of stars overhead. After a long day on the road, I felt the fatigue settle in. The hum of the engine and the rhythmic thumping of the tires on the asphalt had a lulling effect, making it hard to keep my eyes open. So, when I noticed a rest area a few miles ahead, I decided to pull over and take a quick break. As I rolled into the rest area, I was surprised to find it nearly deserted. Only one other truck was parked under the flickering fluorescent lights, its cab dark and seemingly abandoned. I parked my rig and stepped out, stretching my legs as I surveyed the surroundings. The air was crisp, carrying with it a hint of impending rain, and the quiet was almost oppressive. I made my way to the restroom, hoping a splash of cold water on my face would help me wake up. As I walked back to my truck, I noticed a figure standing by the other rig. It was a woman, dressed in a long, tattered coat. Her hair hung down in messy waves, obscuring her face. I paused, uncertain if I should approach her. The eerie silence around us felt heavy, and the dim lighting added to the sense of unease. "Excuse me," I called out, trying to sound friendly. "Are you okay?" She turned slowly to face me, and I felt a chill run down my spine. Her eyes were wide and vacant, almost as if she were in a trance. "I'm lost," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Can you help me?" I took a step closer, but something in her demeanor made me hesitate. "Where are you trying to go?" I asked, keeping my distance. "I don't know," she replied, her gaze drifting off into the darkness. "I can't remember." I looked around, but there was no sign of anyone else. "Maybe you should wait here. I can call for help," I offered, trying to sound reassuring. "No," she exclaimed suddenly, her eyes flaring with intensity. "You don't understand. I need to go back. He's coming for me." The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end. "Who's coming?" I asked, my heart racing. But she just shook her head, her expression shifting to one of deep fear. I didn't know what to do. I wanted to help, but something felt off. The way she spoke, the fear in her eyes, it felt like a scene straight out of a horror movie. "I can't stay here," she said, her voice trembling. "Please, you have to let me go." Before I could respond, she turned and fled into the darkness, disappearing into the trees that surrounded the rest area. I stood there, stunned, my mind racing with questions. Should I have followed her? Should I have called the police? But a deeper instinct urged me to stay away. The last thing I wanted was to get involved in whatever strange situation she was entangled in. Shaking off the unease, I climbed back into my truck and decided to call it a night. I needed to get some rest if I was going to make it to Dallas on time. I reclined my seat and closed my eyes. hoping sleep would come quickly. Just as I was drifting off, the CB radio crackled to life. I shot upright, heart racing. "Breaker 19? Anyone out there?" The voice was gruff and filled with static. "Long Haul 37, what's your 20? I replied, rubbing my eyes. "Just passing through the old rest area off Highway 287. Anyone else around?" the voice asked, sounding tense. "Yeah, I just pulled in. It's pretty quiet though. Just me and one other truck." There was a pause on the other end. "You see a woman out there? Long coat, messy hair?" My stomach dropped. Yeah, I saw her. She seemed lost. "Get out of there," the voice warned urgently. "I've heard stories about that place. They say she's not just a lost traveler. Something bad happened to her." "What do you mean?" I asked, feeling a cold sweat break out on my forehead. "People say she lures drivers into the woods. They never come back. Just disappear," he said. "I'm heading out now. You should too." My heart raced as I listened to the man's words. I hadn't given much thought to the tales of the supernatural that truckers love to share. But now, standing in the dim light of the rest area, I felt a wave of fear wash over me. I decided it was time to leave. I fired up the engine and pulled out of the lot, the tires crunching on the gravel. As I drove away, I glanced in the rearview mirror and saw the woman standing at the edge of the trees, watching me leave. My pulse quickened, and I forced myself to focus on the road ahead. The highway stretched before me, but the unsettling feeling didn't leave. I switched on the radio, searching for something to take my mind off the encounter. As I drove, I replayed the events in my head, wondering if I should have done more to help her. But the voice on the CB echoed in my mind, urging me to keep my distance. Hours passed, and I found myself on a dark, lonely stretch of road. The rain began to fall, creating a thick fog that enveloped everything around me. I slowed my speed, gripping the wheel tightly as visibility dropped. The headlights barely pierced through the mist, and the world outside faded into a gray blur. Suddenly, the radio crackled again. "Long Haul 37, come in." It was the same voice as before, frantic now. "You still out there?" "Yeah, I'm here," I responded, trying to steady my voice. "Good. Listen, that woman. She's not what she seems. She was never lost. They say she's looking for someone to take with her," he warned. I shivered, glancing around nervously. I saw her. She seemed scared, but "Don't trust her," he interrupted. "She'll draw you in, and you won't come back. I've been hearing whispers about her for years." "Whispers?" I asked, confused. "Those who disappear. They don't just vanish. They get taken. She lures them into the fog, and they join her in whatever hell she's in," he said, his voice trembling. I felt a knot form in my stomach. "What do you mean? What happened to them?" "I don't know all the details, but people say she was a hitchhiker once. They picked her up, thinking she was just a girl in need. But once they got close enough, she turned into something else. They say she has a darkness inside her, a spirit looking for revenge," he said. My heart raced. "But what do I do?" "Stay away from the fog, whatever you do. Keep driving until you find a safe place," he advised. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. "I will. Thanks for the heads up." As I continued down the highway, I kept my eyes peeled for signs of civilization. The rain fell heavier, the fog thickening, and I could feel a creeping sense of dread settling in my gut. I glanced at the clock. It was nearing 2 a.m. I needed to find a place to rest, but I felt too terrified to pull over anywhere. Suddenly, my headlights caught a glimpse of something on the side of the road. I squinted, trying to make out what it was. My heart sank as I recognized the figure. It was the woman again, standing there in the rain, her coat soaked and clinging to her body. She looked even more ghostly than before, and for a moment, I felt a pull to stop. "No, Jake, don't do it," I muttered to myself, gripping the wheel tighter. "Keep going." But the woman stepped into the road, her eyes locking onto mine. "Please," she cried, her voice full of desperation. "I need help. I can't find my way home." I fought the urge to stop. "I can't help you," I shouted back, my voice trembling. "Get away from the road." She took a step forward, her face twisted in anguish. "You don't understand. He's coming for me." I could feel panic rising in my chest. I pressed the gas pedal down, accelerating past her, my heart racing. I dared not look back, fearing what I might see. The fog closed in around me, obscuring everything else. I drove for what felt like hours, the road stretching endlessly ahead, my mind racing with fear and confusion. The woman's face haunted me, and I couldn't shake the feeling that she was still out there, lurking in the shadows. Then, just when I thought I might escape, my radio crackled again. "Long Haul 37, are you there? You need to listen." I gripped the mic, heart pounding. "I'm here. What's happening?" "I just got a report. There's been an accident up ahead," the voice said, urgency lacing his tone. "Several trucks have crashed, and they say it's because of that woman." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" "They say she appeared in the road, just like you described. Drivers swerved to avoid her, and that's when the chaos started. You have to get off the road," he warned. "No," I shouted, the fear surging through me. "I can't stop. She'll find me." "You have to. There's a diner a few miles ahead. Get there, and you'll be safe. But you need to hurry," he urged. I glanced at my surroundings, feeling the oppressive fog closing in. The rain was relentless now, hammering down on the windshield as I pressed the accelerator. The truck rumbled forward, but I could feel the presence of the woman lurking just beyond the fog. "Please, God, let me make it," I whispered under my breath. Finally, through the haze, I spotted the glow of neon lights in the distance. My heart leaped with hope. The diner. I slammed the brakes as I pulled into the parking lot, skidding to a stop. The moment the engine died, I jumped out, sprinting toward the entrance. Inside, the warmth enveloped me, but my sense of relief was short-lived. The diner was nearly empty, just a couple of truckers nursing their coffees, and a waitress glancing at me with curiosity. I rushed to the counter, breathless. "Is it safe here?" I gasped, scanning the room for signs of the woman. The waitress gave me a puzzled look. "You okay, hun?" "I saw a woman on the road," I explained, my heart racing. "She's out there. I need to know I'm safe." "Calm down," she said gently, her eyes widening with concern. "There's no one out there. It's just the storm." But I couldn't shake the feeling of dread. The whispers echoed in my mind, warning me of what was to come. I glanced back toward the window, the rain drumming against the glass. I couldn't see anything beyond the glare of the lights, but I knew she was out there, waiting. As I sat at the counter, I could hear the faint murmurs of the other truckers discussing the recent accidents. One of them leaned over, a weathered man with a long beard. "You've seen her, haven't you? The lady in the fog?" I nodded, my heart racing. "What do you know about her?" "More than I care to," he said, shaking his head. "Folks say she used to be a hitchhiker, just like you. They picked her up, thinking they were helping, but she's cursed, lures men to their doom." I felt a chill run down my spine. "But why?" "They say she's looking for revenge," he replied, his voice low. "Lost souls who don't know how to move on." I leaned in closer, desperate for answers. "But how do you escape her?" "Stay alert," he warned. "Don't let her draw you in. If you hear whispers, don't listen. Just keep driving." I swallowed hard, taking his words to heart. But as the minutes ticked by, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. I was trapped here, and the fog was closing in outside. I glanced at the clock. Time was slipping away. Suddenly, the door swung open with a creak, and I felt my breath catch in my throat. The woman stood in the doorway, drenched from the rain, her eyes locked onto mine. The diner fell silent, and all eyes turned to her. She stepped inside, glancing around with an eerie calmness. "Please," she whispered, her voice dripping with desperation. "I need help." The truckers exchanged uneasy glances, but I could see their fear mirrored in my own reflection. I had heard the warnings. I had felt the dread. And now she was here, standing right in front of me. "No," I shouted, standing up abruptly. "You need to leave." The waitress looked between us, confused. "What's happening?" "Stay back," I yelled, feeling the panic rising inside me. The woman's expression shifted, and for a moment, she looked almost human, as if she were begging for compassion. "I can't go back," she pleaded, her voice breaking. "You don't understand." But then, just as quickly, her demeanor changed. Her eyes darkened, and a chilling smile spread across her face. "He's coming for me, and you can't stop it." In that instant, the air grew thick with tension, and I felt the room spinning. The truckers shifted uncomfortably in their seats, and I could see fear etched across their faces. I had to get out of there. "I'm leaving," I shouted, turning to bolt for the door. But as I moved, the lights flickered, plunging the diner into darkness for a brief moment. I felt a cold breeze wash over me, and when the lights came back on, she was gone. The diner was empty, and I stood there, frozen in shock. "What the hell just happened?" I breathed, glancing around. The truckers were just as bewildered, exchanging frantic whispers. "Where did she go?" "She was right here," I insisted, panic surging in my chest. "She was just here." But no one could explain it. The waitress shook her head, looking pale. "You need to leave. Get out of here before it's too late." Without waiting for another word, I dashed for the door. The storm raged outside, but I didn't care. I climbed back into my truck and fired up the engine, the sound echoing in the stillness. I had to get away. As I pulled onto the highway, the rain fell harder than before, and the fog rolled back in, thicker than ever. My heart raced as I drove through the darkness, unsure of where I was headed. I could still feel her presence, lurking just beyond the fog, waiting for her chance to strike. Hours passed, and the roads seemed endless. I drove in a daze, lost in my thoughts. Just when I thought I could finally breathe, the radio crackled to life again. "Long Haul 37, are you there?" It was the same voice, sounding more frantic than before. "I'm here," I replied, my heart racing. "Did you see her?" he asked, panic in his voice. "Did she get to you?" "Yes, she was at the diner. I thought I lost her, but I don't know if she's still following me," I shouted, gripping the wheel. "Stay strong," he urged. "You have to keep moving. Don't let her in." But even as he spoke, I felt the air shift around me. The fog thickened, and the darkness closed in. I could hear whispers again, distant but clear, calling out to me from the shadows. "Help us! Join us!" "No!" I screamed, my voice cracking. "Leave me alone." But the whispers grew louder, wrapping around me like a vice. I felt a presence in the cab with me, chilling my bones. I was trapped, surrounded by darkness, and the woman's face flashed in my mind, the pleading, desperate expression twisting into a smile as the shadows closed in. "Don't go," the voices echoed. "Stay with us." I fought back tears, gripping the wheel tighter as I struggled to push them away. "I won't let you take me. I won't." I pressed down on the accelerator, speeding down the highway as the fog engulfed me. The road stretched ahead, but the darkness felt insurmountable. I didn't know how much longer I could last, how long I could keep running. Then, out of nowhere, I spotted a small sign for a truck stop ahead. Relief flooded through me as I pulled in, desperate for a place to regroup. I parked my rig and stumbled out, the cold air hitting me like a slap. I didn't care who was around me. I just needed to breathe. Inside the truck stop, the neon lights flickered, casting eerie shadows on the walls. The place was empty, except for a few tired truckers and a sleepy cashier behind the counter. I approached the cashier, breathless. "Is it safe here?" He looked up, eyes narrowing. "You okay, man?" "I saw her, the woman in the fog. I need to know if she's out there," I said, my voice shaking. He frowned, glancing out the window. "There's nothing out there right now, just the rain." But I could feel it, the presence, the whispers beckoning me from the shadows. I wanted to scream, to warn everyone, but I knew they wouldn't understand. "Listen to me. She's dangerous. She'll lure you in," I pleaded, but the cashier just shook his head. "Take it easy, buddy. You're just tired. Why don't you grab some coffee and sit for a while?" I turned away, my heart pounding. I needed to find a way out. I could still feel her watching me, lurking just beyond the walls, waiting for me to let my guard down. I stumbled to the restroom, splashing water on my face, trying to shake off the fear. But as I looked into the mirror, I caught a glimpse of something behind me. My heart raced as I turned, but there was nothing there, just darkness. I left the restroom, gripping my phone tightly. I needed to call someone, anyone, to help me. But as I glanced at the screen, it flickered and died. I cursed under my breath, panic surging once more. "Jake!" a voice called out from behind me. I turned, seeing the man from the diner, the one with the beard. "You need to get out of here," he urged, his face pale. "She's coming." I felt my heart drop. "What do you mean?" "Don't let her in. She'll take you," he shouted, his voice filled with urgency. I backed away, feeling the weight of dread pressing down on me. "I don't want any trouble. I just want to go home." "Home? You think she'll let you go home?" he asked, his eyes wide with fear. "Once you're in her grasp, there's no escape." The walls of the truck stop seemed to close in around me, the shadows thickening as the air grew heavy. I could hear whispers again, echoing through the room. "Join us. Stay with us." "Stop it," I yelled, clamping my hands over my ears. But the voices only grew louder, wrapping around me like chains. "Jake, you have to fight it," the man shouted, but his words faded into the background as the darkness swirled around me. I felt myself slipping, pulled deeper into the fog, and I knew I had to escape. I rushed for the door, flinging it open and running into the night. The rain lashed against my skin, but I pushed forward, desperate to escape the grasp of whatever was haunting me. I stumbled back to my truck, heart racing as I climbed inside, hands shaking as I fumbled with the keys. I couldn't let her take me. I wouldn't let her win. As I revved the engine, the fog closed in around me again. But this time, I wouldn't let it hold me captive. I pressed down on the accelerator, barreling down the road, the truck roaring through the night. But as I drove, the whispers followed, taunting me from the darkness. "You can't escape. You're one of us now." "No," I screamed, gripping the wheel tighter. "I won't listen to you." With every ounce of strength, I fought against the voices, against the darkness that sought to pull me in. The highway stretched before me, but the weight of the fog felt suffocating. Finally, I saw lights in the distance, a town, a beacon of hope. I drove toward it, heart pounding as I desperately sought salvation. As I reached the outskirts of the town, I could see other trucks parked along the road, and the comforting glow of streetlights cut through the darkness. I pulled into a gas station, skidding to a stop, and jumped out. "Help! Someone help me!" I shouted, running to the clerk inside. The man looked at me, eyes wide with confusion. "What's wrong?" "She's out there, the woman in the fog. I can't let her take me," I gasped, panic clawing at my chest. But the clerk just shook his head, concern flooding his face. "There's nothing out there. You're safe here." As I stood there, panting, I could still hear the whispers, still feel her presence lurking in the shadows. "You can't run forever. You belong to us now." I turned, desperate to find some form of escape. "Please just let me stay," I pleaded. "You need to calm down," the clerk said softly, reaching for the phone. "I'll call someone to help." But before he could dial, the lights flickered, plunging the room into darkness once more. I felt a cold wind rush past me, and when the lights returned, the clerk was gone. The gas station was empty, and I was left standing alone, heart racing. I stumbled back, fear crashing over me like a wave. "No, please." But the darkness closed in, and I could hear her voice, soft and alluring. "You can't hide forever. Come to me." With a surge of adrenaline, I bolted out of the gas station and back to my truck. I climbed inside and locked the doors, feeling the weight of dread settle in. I had to keep moving. I couldn't let her win. As I sped down the road, the fog continued to thicken, wrapping around me like a shroud. I felt her presence lurking just beyond the darkness, waiting for the moment I would falter. But I refused to give in. I pressed down on the accelerator, determined to outrun the whispers, determined to escape the nightmare that had become my reality. I didn't know what would happen next, but I knew I had to fight. I had to survive. And as I drove into the night, I promised myself that I would never let the darkness take me. No matter what it took, I would find a way to break free from the whispers of the night. I've been a long-haul truck driver for over a decade, traversing America's highways like a second skin. I've seen it all: deserted stretches of road, all-night diners filled with characters from every walk of life, and weather that can shift from blistering heat to bone-chilling cold in an instant. But nothing prepared me for the night that changed everything. The night I encountered the darkness that lingers just off the pavement. It was late September, and I was on my usual route along Highway 66, a stretch of road known for its desolate beauty, and according to some, ghostly legends. The sun was setting, casting a golden hue across the horizon, and I felt the familiar tingle of excitement that comes from the open road ahead. My truck, an old Freightliner with 100,000 miles, hummed beneath me, and the radio played softly in the background. As twilight descended, I pulled into a small rest area, the kind that often feels like a portal to nowhere. I needed to stretch my legs and grab a quick bite from the cooler in the cab. As I stepped out, I noticed the eerie stillness that blanketed the area. The air was thick with tension, as if nature itself was holding its breath. The rest area was empty, save for a few scattered picnic tables and a faded sign warning travelers to stay vigilant. I shrugged off the unease creeping up my spine and walked over to the picnic table, pulling out a sandwich and a thermos of coffee. I savored the silence as I took a few bites, listening to the gentle rustle of leaves in the breeze. Suddenly, I heard a distant sound, a faint melody, almost like a lullaby carried on the wind. I glanced around, but the rest area remained deserted. Curious, I stood up and walked toward the sound, which seemed to be coming from the tree line bordering the rest area. As I approached, The melody faded, replaced by an unsettling silence. Probably just the wind, I muttered to myself, shaking my head. I turned back to my truck, but a sudden chill made me stop in my tracks. I glanced back toward the trees and swore I saw a shadow moving among the branches. It was quick, just a flicker, but it was enough to send my heart racing. "Get a grip, man," I scolded myself. "It's just a shadow." But as I climbed back into the cab, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The night grew darker, and I started the engine, ready to hit the road again. As I pulled back onto Highway 66, I turned on the headlights, illuminating the asphalt ahead. The familiar hum of the truck filled the cab, but the unsettling feeling lingered. The melody I had heard still echoed in my mind, and I couldn't help but feel that something was off. Driving into the night, I kept glancing in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see something lurking behind me. The stretch of highway seemed endless, illuminated only by my truck's headlights. After a couple of hours, I noticed something peculiar. The road felt eerily quiet. No cars, no sounds of civilization, just the monotonous rumble of my engine and the soft whir of the tires against the pavement. It was around midnight when I spotted a flicker of light ahead. As I drew closer, I realized it was a truck parked on the side of the road. Curiosity piqued. I slowed down and pulled up beside it. The driver, a middle-aged man with a scruffy beard and a haunted expression, sat slumped over the steering wheel, seemingly lost in thought. I honked the horn, startling him out of his stupor. He looked up, eyes wide, and I could see the fear etched on his face. "You okay?" I asked, my voice tinged with concern. He nodded slowly, but I could tell something was off. "Just needed a break," he said, his voice shaky. "You're not going to believe me, but there's something out here." "What do you mean?" I asked, curiosity overcoming my caution. "There's a ghost," he whispered, glancing nervously around as if afraid it would hear him. "I saw her when I was parked. A woman, pale as death, just standing in the middle of the road. I thought I was seeing things, but then she vanished." I chuckled nervously, dismissing his words as a wild tale. "You sure it wasn't just fatigue playing tricks on you?" He shook his head vehemently. "I'm telling you, man, I'm not the first to see her. She's been haunting this stretch of Highway 66 for years. They say she was a truck driver who got killed in an accident, and now she's searching for her lost soul." A chill ran down my spine, and I felt the air grow heavy with tension. "I've been driving this route for years and never heard about any ghost," I replied, attempting to sound more skeptical than shaken. "Just be careful, okay?" he said, his voice trembling. "If you see her, don't stop. Just keep driving." I nodded, trying to shake off the unease. "Thanks for the heads up. Drive safe." With that, I shifted into gear and pulled away, glancing in my rearview mirror one last time. He was still watching me, a haunted look in his eyes as the darkness swallowed him whole. The night wore on, and I couldn't shake the man's warning. The road stretched endlessly before me, and I felt the weight of solitude pressing down. Every shadow felt alive, every flicker of light igniting my imagination. My mind raced with thoughts of the ghostly woman, and I found myself listening intently to the sounds of the night, half expecting to hear that haunting lullaby again. About an hour later, I was jolted from my thoughts when my headlights caught something on the side of the road. My heart raced as I squinted into the darkness. There she stood, a woman dressed in a flowing white dress, hair cascading around her shoulders, standing eerily still as if waiting for something. The sight sent chills coursing through me. I could feel the weight of dread settle in my stomach, and instinct kicked in. I slammed on the brakes, but something pulled at me, a strange compulsion to stop. I hesitated, torn between fear and curiosity. As I came to a halt, she turned to face me, her eyes wide and hollow. "Help me," she whispered, her voice carrying on the wind like a haunting melody. I couldn't move. A part of me wanted to drive away, to escape the terrifying vision before me, but another part felt an overwhelming need to understand. "What do you want?" I finally managed to ask, my voice trembling. "I'm lost," she said, her voice echoing like a distant memory. "I need to find my way home." Suddenly, images flooded my mind, visions of a car accident, screeching tires, and the unmistakable sound of glass shattering. My heart raced as I realized this was the ghost the trucker had warned me about. "Why are you here?" I asked, panic setting in. "Because I can't leave until someone helps me," she replied, stepping closer. "You're the first to see me in years. Please, I need you." A cold shiver crept down my spine as I felt her gaze piercing through me. "What happened to you?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "I was driving late at night," she said, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "I lost control, crashed, and no one found me. I died here, in this spot. I can't find peace." I felt a wave of empathy wash over me, mixed with fear. "How can I help you?" I asked, desperate to break the spell she had cast over me. "Help me find my body," she whispered, her voice growing fainter. "I need you to remember me, to tell my story." Before I could respond, she stepped back into the shadows, her figure dissolving into the night. The haunting melody returned, echoing in my mind as I struggled to comprehend what had just happened. I was left alone on the empty highway, fear clawing at my insides. Shaken, I started the engine and drove on, but I couldn't shake the feeling that she was still with me. I could hear the whispers of her sorrow echoing in my mind, the desperate plea for help lingering like a ghost itself. I couldn't forget her face, the hollow eyes that seemed to pierce my soul. For the next few miles, I felt her presence lurking just beyond my vision. I glanced in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see her again, but the road remained empty. The only sound was the hum of the tires against the pavement, a constant reminder of the night's surreal events. The road began to twist and turn, and I found myself driving deeper into the night. I pulled over at another rest area, my hands shaking as I tried to collect my thoughts. I climbed out of the truck, desperate for fresh air, but the chill in the air sent a shiver down my spine. As I stood outside, staring into the darkness, I heard the faint melody again, clearer this time, more insistent. It wrapped around me like a shroud, drawing me closer to the trees lining the rest area. Against my better judgment, I followed the sound, heart pounding in my chest. As I ventured into the darkness, the air grew heavier, and the trees loomed ominously overhead. The melody seemed to guide me, pulling me deeper into the woods until I stumbled upon a clearing. In the center stood a small, rusted car, half buried in the underbrush. My heart sank as the memories flooded back. The accident, the woman, the screams that echoed through the night. I approached the vehicle cautiously, feeling an overwhelming sense of dread wash over me. The car was old, its paint chipped and faded, and as I peered inside, I felt my stomach churn. There, tangled in the wreckage, lay the remnants of a life lost, clothes torn and battered, personal belongings scattered like forgotten dreams. And then I saw it, a delicate bracelet glimmering in the darkness, the same one the woman had worn. The realization struck me like a lightning bolt, and I stumbled back, gasping for breath. "This was your car," I whispered, tears streaming down my face. As if in response, the air around me shifted, and I felt her presence enveloping me, "Thank you," she whispered, her voice a soft caress. "Now I can finally rest." In that moment, I understood the weight of her sorrow, the burden of her unfinished business. I had helped her find peace, and in doing so, I had freed myself from the haunting grip of the past. As dawn broke, casting a golden light through the trees, I turned to leave. The haunting melody faded into the distance, replaced by the soothing sounds of the waking world. I felt lighter, as if a great weight had been lifted from my shoulders. I climbed back into my truck, the engine roaring to life as I pulled away from the clearing. The road stretched out before me, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. As I drove away from Highway 66, I knew I had faced something truly terrifying, something that could have broken me. But I had emerged stronger, forever changed by the encounter. The road was long, and I still had miles to go, but I would carry her story with me, a testament to the souls who linger in the shadows, waiting for someone to hear their plea. And as the sun rose, casting a warm glow over the asphalt, I couldn't help but smile, knowing that I had made a difference in the life of a lost soul. The open road beckoned, and I was ready to embrace whatever lay ahead, carrying the memory of the haunting melody in my heart forever. I've been a truck driver for over 15 years, and I thought I had seen it all. Strange encounters at gas stations, late-night diners with bizarre patrons, and stretches of desolate highway that could send shivers down anyone's spine. But nothing could prepare me for the night that would change everything. It was a cold October evening, and I was hauling a load of fresh produce from California to Chicago. The air was thick with fog as I cruised along Route 66, the faint glow of my headlights illuminating the winding road ahead. My truck, an old Peterbilt, felt like an extension of my own body, vibrating with the hum of the engine. Around midnight, I decided to stop at a rest area, hoping to grab a quick bite and stretch my legs. I pulled into the parking lot, the headlights cutting through the thick fog. The place was eerily quiet, the kind of quiet that makes your skin crawl. As I stepped out of the truck, I noticed an old, dilapidated building at the edge of the rest area. It looked abandoned, with broken windows and peeling paint, but something about it drew me in. I brushed off the uneasy feeling and headed toward the building. Inside, the air was stale and the floor creaked beneath my boots. Graffiti covered the walls, remnants of long-gone visitors. I shined my flashlight around, half expecting to see someone lurking in the shadows. The only sound was the faint dripping of water somewhere in the darkness. As I turned to leave, I caught a glimpse of something out of the corner of my eye, a figure standing at the far end of the building. My heart raced as I squinted into the shadows. A woman stood there, her hair disheveled and her clothes tattered. She looked lost, her eyes wide with fear. "Are you okay?" I called out, my voice echoing in the emptiness. She didn't respond, just stood there, her gaze fixed on something I couldn't see. "Hey, it's all right. Do you need help?" Finally, she stepped forward, and I could see her face, pale and gaunt, as if she hadn't eaten in days. I can't find my way home," she said, her voice trembling. "Where do you live?" I asked, taking a cautious step toward her. "I don't know," she whispered. "I was driving, and then everything went dark." I felt a shiver run down my spine. "How long have you been here?" "I don't know. I can't remember." She looked down, her eyes filled with sorrow. "Please, help me." I didn't know what to do. Part of me wanted to flee, but the other part felt compelled to help her. "All right, let's get you out of here. Come on." As I turned to leave, I heard a loud crash behind me. I spun around to find the woman standing still, her eyes wide and terrified. "No, don't go," she screamed, her voice echoing in the empty building. I felt a rush of fear and instinctively backed away. "What's wrong?" "They're coming for me," she cried, pointing toward the darkness behind me. Before I could react, a low growl reverberated through the air, sending chills down my spine. I glanced back, but there was nothing there, just shadows stretching along the walls. I felt an overwhelming urge to run, but I couldn't abandon her. "What do you mean? Who's coming?" She took a shaky step toward me, her face twisted in fear. "The shadows. They won't let me go." Suddenly, the lights flickered, plunging the room into darkness. I felt my heart racing as I grabbed her hand, trying to lead her back toward the entrance. But as I turned, the woman gasped and pulled away. "No, you can't leave," she shouted. "What are you talking about? We need to go." "No, they'll take you too." In that moment, I realized she wasn't just scared. She was terrified, and it was contagious. The air grew heavy with dread, and I could feel the darkness closing in around us. "Who will take me?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "The ones who died here," she said, her eyes darting around the room. "They're angry. They want revenge." A chill ran through me as I remembered the stories I had heard about this stretch of highway. The accidents, the disappearances. I had always dismissed them as urban legends, but now I was standing in the middle of something that felt all too real. Before I could say anything else, a cold breeze swept through the building, causing the old windows to rattle. The shadows seemed to grow darker, twisting and swirling around us. "We have to get out of here," I shouted, grabbing her hand again. She hesitated, her eyes wide with fear. "I can't leave. They won't let me." "Who won't let you?" "The spirits. They're trapped, just like me." I was losing my patience. "Listen to me. We can't stay here. You need to trust me." Suddenly, the shadows surged forward, creeping along the walls like dark tendrils. I felt a cold grip on my ankle, pulling me toward the darkness. "No!" I yelled, struggling against the unseen force. I looked at the woman, desperation flooding my veins. "Please, help me." But she was paralyzed with fear, staring wide-eyed at the approaching shadows. "They'll take you. You have to run." In that moment, I made a choice. I let go of her hand and sprinted toward the entrance, my heart pounding in my chest. The shadows clawed at me, but I pushed through, fueled by adrenaline. I burst out of the building and into the night, gasping for breath. I glanced back, expecting to see the woman following me, but she was still inside, her silhouette framed by the doorway. "Help me!" she screamed, her voice breaking. "Run!" I shouted, my voice desperate. But before she could move, the shadows surged forward, engulfing her in darkness. I felt a wave of terror wash over me as I turned and sprinted toward my truck, my heart racing with panic. I jumped inside, slamming the door behind me. I fumbled with the keys, my hands shaking. The engine roared to life, and I peeled out of the parking lot, leaving the rest area behind. I glanced in the rearview mirror, but all I could see was darkness. I drove for miles, the road stretching endlessly before me. The fear from that night clung to me like a second skin. I couldn't shake the image of the woman's terrified face, her pleas for help echoing in my mind. What had I just witnessed? I had always prided myself on being tough, on handling anything the road threw at me. But this was different. I had left someone behind, and the weight of that decision gnawed at me. I finally pulled into a truck stop a few hours later, desperate for some comfort. As I stepped inside, I was greeted by the familiar sounds of laughter and conversation. But even among the bustle, I felt an unsettling chill in the air. I ordered a cup of coffee and sat in the corner booth, trying to process everything. The diner was filled with truck drivers and travelers, but the memory of the woman haunted me. Had I made the right choice? Suddenly, I heard a soft whisper, sending chills down my spine. I turned to see an old man sitting at the counter, his eyes locked onto me. "You should have helped her," he said, his voice low and gravelly. I frowned, feeling a knot form in my stomach. "What do you mean?" He leaned closer, a knowing look in his eyes. "The spirits in those woods are restless. They don't forget." I felt my heart race. "What are you talking about?" "People come and go, but they're always watching. If you leave someone behind, they'll never forgive you." Panic gripped me as I recalled the woman's terrified expression, the shadows that had engulfed her. I couldn't help her. I was scared. "Fear doesn't absolve you," the old man replied, his gaze piercing through me. "You're connected now. They'll find you." I felt the blood drain from my face as his words sank in. I had thought I was free, but the truth was lurking just beneath the surface, waiting to claim me. As I finished my coffee, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me. I glanced over my shoulder, half expecting to see the woman standing there, her hollow eyes filled with sorrow. I quickly paid my bill and rushed outside, the chill of the night air hitting me like a wave. As I climbed into my truck, I felt a strange sense of dread creeping over me. The road stretched out ahead, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being followed. Days turned into weeks, and I tried to put the encounter behind me, but the memories haunted my dreams. I could hear the whispers in the wind, calling me back to that dark place. Each night, I found myself glancing in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see her there. One night, as I drove through the fog, I felt an overwhelming sense of dread. The shadows seemed to cling to the road, twisting and writhing in the darkness. I gripped the steering wheel, trying to shake off the feeling. Then, out of nowhere, my truck's lights flickered and went out, plunging me into darkness. Panic surged through me as I fumbled for the switch, but nothing happened. I was alone, enveloped by shadows. Suddenly, a soft voice echoed in the darkness. "You left me behind." My heart raced as I recognized the voice. It was the woman. "I'm sorry," I shouted, my voice trembling. "I didn't know how to help you." "You should have stayed," she whispered, the darkness closing in around me. "Now you belong to me." I felt the weight of her words pressing down on me, and I realized the truth. I was never free. The shadows had followed me, and now they were claiming their due. As the darkness enveloped my truck, I took a deep breath, accepting the inevitable. I had made my choice that night, and now I would pay the price. I closed my eyes, feeling the cold grip of the shadows wrapping around me, and as I surrendered, I heard her voice one last time. "Thank you for finding me." And just like that, everything went black. I've been a long-haul truck driver for nearly a decade, driving the highways from coast to coast, and I thought I had seen it all. Mysterious hitchhikers, bizarre encounters at roadside diners, and stretches of road that seemed to defy logic. But nothing prepared me for the night I faced the supernatural on Highway 50, known as the loneliest road in America. It was late October, the air crisp with the first hints of winter. I was hauling a load of electronics from San Francisco to Denver, and as I navigated through the remote stretches of Nevada, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting an eerie glow over the endless landscape. My radio crackled with static, and the occasional howl of the wind outside made the isolation feel more palpable. As the night deepened, fatigue began to set in. I pulled into a rundown rest stop, a place that looked like it hadn't seen a visitor in ages. The flickering lights cast strange shadows, and I felt an inexplicable chill run down my spine. I decided to stretch my legs, hoping to shake off the weariness before hitting the road again. As I stepped out, the silence was deafening. The only sounds were the soft rustle of leaves and the distant howl of the wind. I glanced around, spotting an old wooden bench and a dilapidated restroom. But something caught my eye, a flicker of movement in the distance. I squinted, trying to make out what it was, but the shadows played tricks on my mind. I shrugged it off and headed toward the restroom. Just as I was about to push the door open, I heard a soft voice calling out from the darkness. "Help me!" My heart raced. I turned, scanning the area, but saw nothing. "Hello?" I called out, my voice echoing in the stillness. "Please," the voice pleaded, weak and trembling. I hesitated, fear clawing at my insides. Was someone in trouble? The voice was faint, but there was a desperation in it that compelled me to investigate. I stepped back, moving toward the sound. "Where are you?" "I'm here. Over here." I followed the voice, which seemed to lead me behind the rest stop. The dim light barely illuminated the ground, and I stumbled over a few rocks, feeling uneasy. There, hidden behind a bush, I found a young woman, her clothes tattered and dirty. Her face was pale, and her eyes were filled with terror. "Thank God you found me," she gasped, her breath ragged. "I thought I was lost forever." "What happened?" I asked, my instincts screaming that something wasn't right. "I was driving with my friends, and we hit something on the road. We got out to check, and then, I don't know. I got separated from them," she stammered, her voice shaking. "Your friends? Where are they?" She shook her head, her eyes widening with fear. "I don't know. I thought I heard them calling me, but then it was just dark." I felt a knot in my stomach. "We need to get you back to my truck. It's not safe out here." She nodded, and I offered her my hand. As she stood up, I noticed something odd. Her skin felt cold to the touch, almost as if she had been exposed to the elements for far too long. "Are you all right?" I asked, concern flooding my voice. "I'm fine, just tired," she replied, her smile unnerving me. I led her back toward my truck, trying to shake off the feeling of dread that clung to me. The closer we got to the vehicle, the more I sensed something was off. It felt like we were being watched. As we approached, I suddenly realized the woman had stopped following me. I turned back, only to find her staring into the darkness behind the rest stop, her expression blank. "What's wrong?" I asked, my heart pounding. "They're here," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Who?" She turned to me, eyes wide with terror. "The ones who got lost." Panic surged through me, and I grabbed her arm. "We need to go now." But she was frozen, staring into the shadows as if entranced. I pulled her toward the truck, but she suddenly yanked her arm away. "No, I can't leave." "Why not?" I shouted, desperation rising in my chest. "They won't let me," she screamed, her voice echoing in the night. In that moment, I felt the air grow colder, a chilling breeze sweeping through the rest stop. Shadows seemed to elongate and twist, creeping closer to us. I turned to run, but the woman grabbed my arm, her grip like ice. "You can't leave. You have to stay with me." I struggled to break free, but the shadows were closing in, dark tendrils reaching toward us. "Let go of me." "Please," she begged, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I don't want to be alone." I yanked my arm away, adrenaline surging through me. "I can't help you. I have to get out of here. As I sprinted toward my truck, I heard her voice fading, calling out for help, desperation lacing every syllable. I fumbled for the keys, my hands shaking as I finally got the door open. I jumped inside and slammed it shut, locking the doors just as the shadows reached the vehicle. I could see her through the window, standing in the pale light, tears streaming down her face. "Please don't leave me," she cried, her voice filled with anguish. But I had to get away. I started the engine and peeled out of the rest stop, the tires screeching against the pavement. I didn't look back, not daring to see if the shadows had claimed her or if she was still there. The road stretched out before me, but the weight of what had just happened pressed heavily on my chest. I couldn't shake the image of her terrified face, the pleading in her eyes. I had left her behind, and now I felt the creeping dread of what I had witnessed. Hours passed as I drove through the night, the road ahead illuminated by my headlights, but the unease lingered, a shadow that refused to fade. I finally pulled into a truck stop diner, hoping to calm my racing heart. The neon lights flickered, casting an otherworldly glow over the parking lot. Inside, the din of chatter surrounded me, but I felt isolated, haunted by what I had encountered. I ordered a cup of coffee and took a seat in the corner, trying to shake off the chill that clung to my bones. The waitress came over, her smile warm, but I couldn't meet her gaze. "Rough night?" she asked, her eyes filled with concern. "Something like that," I replied, my voice low. I could feel the weight of the woman's eyes on me, even as I sat there. The image of her face filled with fear wouldn't leave my mind. "You okay?" she asked again, tilting her head. "I saw something out there," I said, my voice shaking slightly. "A woman. She was lost." The waitress frowned, glancing around the diner. "You're not the first one to mention her. People say there's a spirit that roams those woods." My heart dropped. "What do you mean?" "Drivers have gone missing over the years. Some say they see her, begging for help, but they say if you get too close, she'll drag you into the darkness with her," she replied, her voice low. I felt sick. I had left her there, and now I was terrified that I had sealed my fate. "What happens to those who get taken?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Some say they disappear without a trace. Others say they come back, but they're never the same," she said, shaking her head. I felt a cold sweat break out across my forehead. "Is there any way to help her?" "The only way is to confront the spirits in those woods," she said. "But it's dangerous. You could lose yourself in the darkness." I sat back, feeling the weight of my choices pressing down on me. I had left her behind, but now I felt an overwhelming urge to go back, to confront whatever it was that haunted that rest stop. "Where did you see her?" I asked, my heart pounding. "About 15 miles down Highway 50, the waitress said, her voice filled with caution. "But it's not a safe place to be at night." I left the diner, my mind racing. I knew I had to go back. I couldn't just abandon her to the shadows. I climbed back into my truck and started the engine, my resolve solidifying as I drove back toward the rest stop. As I approached, the fog rolled in thick, obscuring my vision. I pulled into the parking lot, the shadows stretching long across the pavement. My heart raced as I stepped out of the truck, the air heavy with an unshakable sense of dread. I moved toward the restroom, my flashlight piercing through the darkness. "Hello?" I called out, my voice echoing against the walls. Silence answered me, thick and oppressive. I felt a chill run down my spine as I stepped behind the rest stop, the shadows closing in around me. "I'm here to help you," I shouted, my voice breaking. Suddenly, I heard a soft sobbing sound. I turned, and there she was, The woman from before, standing in the same spot as before, tears streaming down her face. "You came back," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I couldn't leave you," I said, stepping closer. "What do you need?" "They won't let me go," she replied, her eyes wide with fear. "You have to help me break free." "Who won't let you go?" "The ones who took me," she said, glancing over her shoulder as if afraid they were listening. I felt the darkness swirling around us, the air thickening with malevolence. "I'll help you," I promised, fear gripping my heart. "What do I have to do?" "Face them. Show them you're not afraid," she urged, her voice barely above a whisper. I swallowed hard, my heart pounding in my chest. "Okay, I'll try." As I stood there, shadows began to swirl around us, coalescing into dark figures that loomed in the distance. I felt a chill crawl up my spine as they moved closer, their forms shifting and writhing in the darkness. "Stay close to me," I urged, my voice steady despite the fear coursing through me. The woman took my hand, her grip cold but reassuring. As the shadows surrounded us, I focused on their forms, trying to summon courage. "I'm not afraid of you," I shouted, my voice echoing against the void. The shadows paused, their forms flickering as if confused. I took a step forward, pushing against the overwhelming sense of dread. "Let her go. You have no hold over us." The shadows recoiled, whispering in a language I couldn't understand. I felt the woman's grip tighten as I stood my ground. "You can't have her. She deserves to be free." With that, the shadows surged forward, engulfing us in darkness. I felt the cold grip of despair wrapping around me, but I refused to back down. "No, you can't have us." In that moment, a blinding light erupted from within me, pushing back against the darkness. The shadows shrieked, their forms dissipating as I held onto the woman's hand, feeling her warmth return. "Keep going. We can break free," she shouted, her voice filled with hope. Together, we charged through the darkness, the light growing brighter with every step. I felt the grip of the shadows loosening, their cries fading into the night. And just as suddenly as it began, we burst through the darkness and into the cool night air. Gasping for breath, I looked around to find myself back at the rest stop, the shadows retreating into the distance. The woman stood beside me, her face now serene, free from the terror that had haunted her. "Thank you," she whispered, tears of relief streaming down her cheeks. I smiled, my heart racing with a mix of triumph and exhaustion. "You're free now." As dawn broke on the horizon, casting golden rays across the highway, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I had faced the darkness and come out stronger on the other side. "Are you going to be all right?" I asked, concern lacing my voice. "I will be," she replied, her smile warm and genuine. "But I have to go now." Before I could respond, she turned and walked toward the light of the rising sun, disappearing into the golden glow. I stood there, watching her fade away, feeling a sense of closure wash over me. With a deep breath, I climbed back into my truck, the sun illuminating the road ahead. I knew I would never forget that night on Highway 50, the haunting experience that had tested my courage. As I drove off, I glanced in the rearview mirror one last time, half expecting to see her standing there. But the road was empty, just me and the vast, lonely highway, stretching into the horizon. And though I had faced the darkness, I knew that some part of it would always linger with me, a reminder of the fragile line between light and shadow on the open road. I've been driving trucks for almost 15 years now, and if there's one thing I've learned, it's that the open road can hide more than just potholes and deer. Sometimes, it hides dark secrets. My story takes place on a warm summer night on Interstate 10, a route I've traveled countless times. But this night was different. I was hauling a load of electronics from Houston to Los Angeles, an uneventful drive by all accounts. It was around 1 a.m. when I stopped at a rest area near a small town in Texas. I pulled into a dimly lit parking lot and stepped out of my rig, stretching my legs. The air was thick, heavy with the scent of diesel and the distant sound of cicadas. As I filled my thermos with coffee, I noticed a woman standing near the edge of the lot. She looked disheveled and was wearing a faded dress that fluttered in the breeze. Her hair was unkempt, and she seemed to be staring into the woods that bordered the rest area. Something about her made my skin crawl, but I couldn't shake the feeling that she needed help. "Hey there," I called out, trying to sound friendly. "You all right?" She turned slowly, her eyes wide and glassy. "I'm lost," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I don't know where I am." "Do you need a ride somewhere?" I offered, glancing around to see if anyone else was nearby. "It's pretty late." She nodded, looking relieved. "Yes, please. My friends and I were driving, but I got separated. I think they're in trouble." I hesitated. There was something off about her story, something that didn't sit right, but I couldn't just leave her there. "All right, get in. I'll help you find them." As she climbed into the passenger seat, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was making a mistake. Her presence felt heavy, as if the air had thickened around us. I tried to brush it off, focusing instead on the road ahead. "Where were you headed?" I asked, trying to make conversation as I merged back onto the interstate. "Just down the road," she said, staring out the window into the darkness. "We were on our way to California for a festival." "How'd you get lost?" "I don't remember," she mumbled, her voice barely above a whisper. "I thought I heard them calling me, but I couldn't find them." The highway was empty, the occasional car zooming past, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every now and then, I glanced at her, and each time, she seemed more distant, as if she were fading into the shadows. I drove for about 20 minutes when I suddenly saw something flash in the headlights, a figure on the side of the road. I slammed on the brakes, my heart racing. "Did you see that?" I asked, looking at her. She nodded slowly, her eyes wide with fear. "I think it was one of my friends." I rolled down the window, straining to see. "Hello?" I called out into the darkness. The figure moved closer, and as it stepped into the light, my stomach dropped. It was another woman, similarly disheveled, with wild hair and a frantic look in her eyes. "Please help me," she cried, her voice shaking. "I can't find my sister." "What's going on?" I asked, my voice rising in alarm. "Where are you two coming from?" "They're in trouble," she yelled, pointing back into the woods. "You have to help us." I glanced at the woman in my truck. She was staring straight ahead, her expression vacant. "We need to go," I said, but it was too late. The woman outside had already opened the passenger door, and the first woman climbed out, joining her. "Wait, come back," I shouted, panic surging through me. But they were already sprinting toward the woods, disappearing into the darkness. I felt a chill creep up my spine, realizing I had lost control of the situation. I sat frozen for a moment, my mind racing. Should I follow them? I glanced at the spot where they had vanished, the trees standing silent and foreboding. Just then, I noticed something out of the corner of my eye, a shadow darting between the trees. With my heart pounding, I made a split-second decision. I stepped out of the truck, trying to call out to them again, but my voice faltered. "Hello? Where are you?" The only response was the sound of rustling leaves and the distant echo of cicadas. I felt a shiver of dread wash over me. I was utterly alone in this moment. I took a hesitant step toward the woods, my instincts screaming at me to turn back. But curiosity got the better of me. I peered into the darkness, trying to make out any shapes, any signs of movement. Then suddenly, I heard it. A soft whisper, barely audible. "Help us." It echoed through the trees, sending chills down my spine. I couldn't tell if it was coming from the women or something else entirely. "Is anyone there?" I called out, my voice trembling. Another whisper, closer this time. "Help us. Come find us." Against my better judgment, I stepped further into the woods, my heart racing with every rustle of the leaves. I called out for them again, but the only response was that haunting whisper, luring me deeper into the darkness. Suddenly, I tripped over something, a root, a rock. I stumbled and fell to the ground, the damp earth cold against my skin. As I looked up, I saw something move in the shadows, something dark and twisted. "Who's there?" I shouted, scrambling back to my feet. And then, I saw them. Two figures standing at the edge of the trees, their eyes glowing in the darkness. It was the two women, but something was off. Their expressions were vacant, their smiles too wide, too unsettling. "Join us," they whispered in unison, their voices blending into one. "It's safer here." My heart raced as I backed away, realizing I was not just dealing with lost souls, but something far more sinister. I turned and sprinted back to my truck, adrenaline pumping through my veins. I jumped into the driver's seat, slamming the door shut and locking it. My hands shook as I fumbled for the keys, praying they would start. The engine roared to life, and I peeled out of the rest area, gravel flying behind me. As I raced down the highway, I glanced back in the mirror. The two women stood at the edge of the trees, their expressions still twisted, but now they were surrounded by shadows that seemed to pulse and writhe, as if alive. I drove faster than I ever had before, the highway stretching endlessly before me. I could still hear the echoes of their whispers, the haunting call to join them. It wasn't until I reached a truck stop an hour later that I finally felt a semblance of safety. I pulled into the lot, my heart still racing, and stepped out of the truck. The cool night air washed over me, grounding me in reality. As I walked into the diner, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I took a seat in a booth, my hands still trembling, and ordered a cup of coffee. The waitress gave me a concerned look, but I couldn't bring myself to tell her what had happened. I knew I would never drive that stretch of Interstate 10 alone again. The open road can be a beautiful thing, but it can also harbor darkness that waits patiently for unsuspecting souls. Sometimes, the shadows on the highway are not just figments of your imagination. They are a warning. To this day, I can't help but wonder about those women and the whispers that beckoned me into the darkness. They haunt my dreams, and I often find myself glancing in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see them there, waiting for me to join them once more. I've been a long-haul truck driver for over 15 years, and let me tell you, the road holds secrets that would make your skin crawl. My name is Jim, and I've driven thousands of miles across the United States, but nothing could prepare me for what happened on that fateful night on Highway 61. It was late September, and I was hauling a load of electronics from Chicago to New Orleans. The weather was unusually warm for fall, and the air was thick with humidity. As I drove, the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with hues of orange and purple. I had about 3 hours left on my route, and I was eager to get to my destination. As I cruised down the highway, I passed by stretches of darkened fields and occasional clumps of trees that seemed to reach for the sky. The further south I drove, the more isolated the landscape became. It was then that I noticed a flickering light in the distance, almost like a firefly dancing in the shadows. Curiosity got the better of me, and I decided to investigate. I pulled off the highway onto a narrow gravel road that led into the woods. As I drove deeper, the trees closed in around me, their branches twisting like gnarled fingers. I spotted a clearing ahead, and that's where I saw it. An old, rusted truck, its paint chipped and peeling, parked by the side of the road. At first, I thought it was abandoned, but as I got closer, I could see a figure leaning against it. A woman, dressed in tattered clothes, her hair wild and unkempt. She looked up as I approached, her eyes wide and vacant. "Hey, are you all right?" I called out, stepping out of my cab. She didn't respond immediately, just stared at me, a strange smile creeping across her face. "I'm lost," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "Where are you trying to go?" I asked, feeling a mixture of concern and unease. "Just trying to find my way home," she replied, her gaze drifting into the distance. "Can you help me?" Against my better judgment, I felt compelled to help her. "Sure, get in. I'll give you a ride back to the highway," I said, gesturing toward my truck. As she climbed into the passenger seat, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Her skin was pale, almost translucent, and she seemed to be shivering despite the warm air. I decided to make small talk to ease the tension. "So, what's your name?" I asked as I pulled back onto the gravel road. "Lucy," she said, her voice distant as she gazed out the window. "Lucy, huh? You from around here?" I asked, trying to engage her in conversation. "Not really," she replied, still fixated on the passing trees. "I was just passing through." I could see her shivering, and I turned up the heat in the cab. "You must be cold. Are you sure you're all right?" "I'm fine," she said, her tone sharp. "Just need to get back." As we drove back onto the highway, the atmosphere inside the truck felt heavy, almost suffocating. The radio crackled to life, playing a haunting melody that echoed through the cab. I quickly switched it off, feeling the weight of her presence beside me. After a few minutes of silence, Lucy turned to me suddenly. "Do you believe in spirits?" she asked, her eyes glinting in the darkness. "Spirits?" I replied, glancing at her briefly before returning my focus to the road. "Not really. Why?" "Because I think I might be one," she said, her voice eerie and calm. A chill crept down my spine, but I laughed it off. "That's a strange thing to say." She smiled again, but there was something unsettling about it. "You'll see. Just wait." I felt a knot tighten in my stomach, but I pressed on. "Where exactly do you live, Lucy?" "Just up ahead," she said, pointing into the darkness. "At the old house by the river." I frowned. I had driven this route many times, and I knew of no houses near the highway. "What old house?" I asked, my voice laced with skepticism. "The one where I used to live," she replied, her tone almost wistful. "It's been abandoned for years." I shook my head, trying to shake off the growing anxiety. "Listen, Lucy, you're scaring me a little. Are you sure you're okay?" She turned to me, her expression shifting from vacant to intense. "You need to believe me. They're coming for me." "Who's coming?" I asked, my heart racing. "The ones who took me," she whispered, her eyes glistening with fear. "They're always watching." I felt my skin crawl. "Okay, this isn't funny. Let's just get you to the next town." Suddenly, the truck's headlights flickered, and the engine sputtered. I glanced down at the dashboard, my heart sinking. What the hell? The lights went out completely, plunging us into darkness. I slammed my foot on the brake, feeling the truck skid slightly. No, no, no. Drive, she screamed, her voice piercing through the silence. I fumbled to restart the engine, panic clawing at my chest. It won't start. I could hear a faint whispering in the air, like 1,000 voices echoing through the night. They're here, Lucy said, her voice shaking. Just then, the truck roared back to life, and the headlights flickered back on. I glanced at Lucy, and her expression had changed. Her eyes were wide with terror, her body trembling. Go, she shouted, her voice a mix of panic and desperation. I floored the gas pedal, the tires screeching as we took off down the highway. The whispering grew louder, almost deafening, and I felt a sense of dread settle in my stomach. What's happening? I yelled over the noise. They're coming, she screamed, her hands gripping the dashboard. I glanced in the rearview mirror, my heart pounding, as I saw shadows moving along the road, dark figures that seemed to keep pace with us. Who the hell are they? The ones who took me, she cried. They want me back. I could hardly focus on the road, my instincts screaming at me to keep driving, to get as far away from her as possible. But every time I looked in the mirror, the shadows drew closer, almost reaching for the truck. Lucy, I shouted, desperation seeping into my voice. You have to tell me what to do. I don't know, she wailed. Just drive faster. I pressed the gas pedal to the floor, the engine roaring in response. The truck surged forward, but the shadows continued to chase us, their whispers intertwining with the sound of the wind. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the darkness, stepping into the road ahead. I swerved, barely avoiding a collision, and glanced back at Lucy. What the hell was that? It's them, she screamed, her eyes wild with terror. They're trying to stop us. My heart raced as I struggled to keep control of the truck. The shadows pressed in closer, their whispers growing louder, almost drowning out the sound of the engine. I can't take this anymore. Just then, I spotted a flicker of light up ahead. A gas station, its neon sign flickering like a beacon in the darkness. There, we need to get there. I swerved onto the exit ramp, tires screeching as we raced toward the station. As I pulled in, I could see the figures lingering outside, their forms blurred and indistinct. Get out, I shouted, jumping from the cab and grabbing Lucy's hand. We bolted toward the entrance, pushing through the glass doors. The gas station attendant looked up, his eyes widening in surprise. What's going on? Call the police, I gasped, glancing back outside. But as I turned, the shadows began to dissipate, fading into the darkness. I felt an overwhelming sense of relief wash over me, but I couldn't shake the feeling that they were still out there, watching. The attendant hurried to the phone while I turned to Lucy. What was that? What did I just see? She looked pale and shaken, her body trembling. I told you. They never let me go. Who are they? I demanded, frustration boiling inside me. I don't know, she cried, but they want me back. I can feel them. Just then, the attendant returned, his expression grim. I can't get through. The lines are dead. Panic surged through me. What do you mean? They're down. No one's coming, he said, glancing nervously at the window. I turned to look outside, and that's when I saw them again. Figures lingering just beyond the reach of the station's lights, their shapes shifting and contorting like shadows. Lucy, we need to get out of here, I said, my heart racing. Where will we go? She whispered, her eyes wide with fear. I scanned the gas station, looking for any other means of escape. The only other option was a back door that led into the darkness. We can try the back, I said, my voice steady despite the fear coursing through me. As we moved toward the back exit, I could feel the temperature drop, the air heavy with dread. The attendant stayed behind, his face pale, as he watched the shadows outside. "Don't open that door," he warned. I ignored him, pushing the door open and stepping into the cool night air. The darkness seemed to swallow us whole as we ventured outside, the faint glow of the gas station fading behind us. Lucy clutched my arm, her nails digging into my skin. "They're coming," she hissed, panic rising in her voice. I felt a cold breeze sweep through the air, carrying with it the faintest whispers, voices calling out, beckoning us to return. "We can't stay here." We started to run, the gravel crunching beneath our feet as we dashed toward the tree line. I could hear the whispers growing louder, echoing in my mind. "Come back. Come back." Suddenly, Lucy stumbled, falling to the ground. I turned to help her, but as I reached for her, I felt an icy hand grip my ankle, pulling me down. "Jim, help me," she cried, her voice laced with terror. I kicked at the shadowy figure wrapping around me, but it was too strong. I glanced at Lucy, and in that moment I realized that she was no longer herself. Her expression was vacant, her eyes glassy and distant. "Lucy," I shouted, desperation flooding my voice. "Don't let them take you." But it was too late. The shadows surged around her, enveloping her form. I reached out, but she was pulled away, her scream echoing through the darkness. The whispers reached a deafening crescendo, drowning out my thoughts. "Join us. Join us." In a final act of desperation, I tore myself free from the grip of the shadows and sprinted back toward the gas station, my heart pounding in my chest. I burst through the door, gasping for breath, and the attendant stared at me, wide-eyed. "Where's she?" he asked, panic rising in his voice. I shook my head, tears streaming down my face. "She's gone. They took her." Without another word, I sprinted back toward the exit, my mind racing. I could still hear Lucy's screams echoing in my ears, the haunting whispers of the shadows trailing behind me. As I reached the edge of the light, I turned back one last time, hoping to catch a glimpse of her. But all I saw was darkness, stretching out before me like an endless void. I collapsed to the ground, overwhelmed by grief and despair. The shadows lingered just beyond the light, their whispers fading into the night. In the days that followed, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The memory of Lucy haunted me, her pale face etched into my mind. I continued my route along Highway 61, but I always felt her presence, like a ghost lingering just out of sight. I learned later that the old house by the river had been abandoned for decades, its windows shattered and doors rotting away. Some said it was haunted, cursed by the spirits of those who had vanished without a trace. I don't drive that route anymore, but every time I hear a whisper in the wind or catch a flicker of movement in the shadows, I remember Lucy and the night the darkness consumed her. The road holds its secrets close, and sometimes those secrets are better left buried. I've been a truck driver for over a decade, and in that time, I've seen things that would make most people think twice about hitting the open road. But nothing could prepare me for what happened one fateful night on Interstate 40. This is a story that haunts me to this day. It was late October, and I was hauling a load from Little Rock to Albuquerque. The sun had set long ago, leaving only the glow of my headlights illuminating the road ahead. I was exhausted, but pushed on, fueled by coffee and sheer determination. The rhythmic hum of the engine and the occasional whistle of wind through the cab made for a surreal backdrop to my thoughts. Around midnight, I decided to take a break at a rest stop near the Arizona border. As I pulled in, the flickering lights of the vending machines cast an eerie glow over the deserted lot. I stepped out of the cab, stretching my legs and inhaling the cool night air. The silence was palpable, broken only by the distant sound of crickets. I wandered over to the restroom, and as I approached, I noticed an old truck parked at the far end of the lot. It looked abandoned, with weeds growing around its tires and dust collecting on the windows. A chill ran down my spine as I glanced at it. Something about that truck felt wrong, as if it were watching me. Shaking off the feeling, I went into the restroom and splashed some cold water on my face. I looked at myself in the mirror, trying to shake off the fatigue. Just then, I heard a noise outside, a low, mournful wail that seemed to echo through the stillness. I paused, my heart racing. What was that? I stepped outside cautiously, scanning the lot. That's when I noticed a figure standing next to the old truck. A woman, dressed in tattered clothes, her long hair hanging over her face. She was staring at the ground, her shoulders shaking as if she were sobbing. "Hey," I called out, trying to mask the unease in my voice. "Are you okay?" She slowly looked up, and I felt a jolt of fear. Her eyes were hollow, dark circles beneath them, and her expression was one of utter despair. "Please," she whispered, "help me." I hesitated, looking around. The lot was empty, and the only sound was the wind rustling through the trees. "What happened?" I asked, stepping closer. "I was driving, and then I lost everything," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I can't find my way back." Something in her tone struck a chord of sympathy in me, but my instincts screamed to run. "Where are your friends?" I asked, glancing back at the old truck, which seemed even more ominous in the moonlight. "They're gone," she replied, her voice breaking. "I was supposed to meet them, but now I'm alone." A part of me wanted to help her. I could just imagine myself in her shoes, lost, alone, desperate. But another part urged me to get back into my truck and leave. I decided to offer her a ride, hoping she'd point me to her friends. "All right, get in. I'll help you find them," I said cautiously. As she climbed into the passenger seat, I felt a wave of unease wash over me. I turned the truck back onto the highway, the headlights cutting through the darkness. The woman stared straight ahead, her silence unsettling. "Where were you last?" I asked, trying to break the tension. "Just driving," she replied, her voice distant. "I remember the road, but I can't remember how I got here." I glanced at her, but her gaze was fixed on the passing trees. Something about her demeanor sent chills down my spine. I tried to focus on the road, but an uneasy feeling crept over me. After a few minutes, I noticed a flicker of movement in the rearview mirror. My heart raced as I turned to look, but there was nothing there, just darkness stretching behind us. "Do you see anyone?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "No," she said, her tone flat. "They're gone. They always leave." A wave of dread washed over me. "What do you mean?" She didn't answer. Instead, she leaned closer to the window, her breath fogging the glass as she peered into the night. I turned back to the road, forcing myself to shake off the growing sense of panic. Suddenly, the radio crackled to life, breaking the silence. A voice came through, distorted and garbled. "Help. Lost. Need assistance." I felt a chill run down my spine. "What the hell?" I muttered, reaching to turn off the radio. "Don't," she said suddenly, her voice sharp. "Leave it on." I hesitated, my finger hovering over the dial. But against my better judgment, I left it on. The voice continued to crackle in and out, sounding more frantic. "Please, help us." I glanced at her, and she was now staring intently at the radio, a strange look in her eyes. "What do you want?" I asked, feeling increasingly unsettled. "They're calling for me," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Who is?" I pressed, anxiety rising in my chest. "The others, the ones who left." As I drove on, I noticed the landscape changing. The trees began to thin, and the highway stretched endlessly before us. I felt the weight of her presence beside me, heavy and suffocating. A sudden thought struck me. What if this woman was not who she seemed? "Where did you say you lost your friends?" I asked, trying to keep my tone casual. "Near the river," she replied, her eyes still fixated on the radio. "They were just right there." I shivered. "What river?" "The one that flows through the darkness," she said cryptically. The shadows around us seemed to thicken, and the air felt charged with an unexplainable energy. I shook my head, trying to clear my thoughts. "Listen," I said, "maybe we should turn back. This doesn't feel right." She turned to me, her eyes narrowing. "You can't leave. They need you." "Who needs me?" Suddenly, she reached over and grabbed my arm with a grip that felt unnaturally strong. "Help me find them," she demanded, her voice rising in pitch. I pulled away, panic surging through me. "I don't want to be part of this," I shouted, swerving slightly as I fought to regain control. "Please," she pleaded, her voice now a mix of desperation and anger. "You don't understand." And just like that, the radio sputtered and went silent. I felt a sudden lurch in my stomach, as if the world around me shifted. The trees seemed to warp and bend in my peripheral vision, and I could swear I saw faces in the shadows, watching us. "Get out!" I shouted, suddenly filled with an overwhelming urge to escape. She froze, her expression transforming from desperation to fury. "You can't leave!" With a surge of adrenaline, I slammed on the brakes, sending the truck skidding to a halt. I threw open the door and leaped out into the cool night air, sprinting away from the truck. "Come back!" she screamed, her voice echoing behind me. "You'll regret this!" I ran into the darkness, my heart pounding in my chest. I could hear her footsteps behind me, but I didn't dare look back. I just kept running, fueled by pure instinct. The world around me felt surreal, like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I stumbled through the brush, branches snagging at my clothes, tearing at my skin. Just when I thought I couldn't run anymore, I burst into a clearing. I stopped to catch my breath, panting heavily. That's when I heard it again. The whispers, low and echoing through the trees. "Help us. Help us." My blood ran cold. I glanced over my shoulder, and to my horror, I saw her standing at the edge of the clearing, surrounded by shadows that seemed to pulse and writhe, almost alive. "Join us," she called, her voice now a haunting melody. "You can't escape." I turned and ran again, desperate to put as much distance between us as possible. But the whispers grew louder, and I felt something tugging at my consciousness, pulling me toward her. Just when I thought I was about to collapse, I saw the lights of a truck stop in the distance. My heart surged with hope, and I sprinted toward it, my feet pounding against the earth. I burst through the parking lot, gasping for breath. I stumbled into the diner, nearly collapsing onto a booth. The patrons looked at me with concern, and the waitress rushed over. "What happened?" she asked, her eyes wide. "Call the police," I gasped. "There's a woman. She's not right. I need help." But as I looked back outside, there was nothing. The shadows danced, but no figure emerged. The waitress called for help, and I could feel the weight lifting, even as the echoes of her voice lingered in my mind. I never spoke of that night again, but I still drive the highways, day after day. But every time I pass that stretch of Interstate 40, I can't shake the feeling of being watched and the haunting whispers that linger in the back of my mind. I wonder what happened to that woman, if she's still out there, searching for someone to join her in the darkness. The open road is beautiful, but it can also be a place of nightmares, a lesson I learned all too well. I've been driving trucks for a decade now, but one night stands out more than the rest. The day was like any other. I picked up a load of goods from a warehouse in Chicago, bound for a small town in the middle of nowhere in Indiana. The sun set quickly, plunging the highway into darkness, and I settled in for a long drive. The first few hours passed smoothly. The hum of the engine and the rhythmic vibrations of the truck were familiar comforts. I tuned into a country music station, letting the melodies ease my mind as the landscape flew by in a blur of darkness. But as I approached a stretch of road, known for its eerie reputation, a chill crept over me. This stretch was infamous among truck drivers, a lonely, winding road that seemed to have a life of its own. They called it Dead Man's Curve. Legends said that many drivers had vanished along this route, their trucks never found. I shrugged off the thought, convincing myself that those stories were just that, stories. But as I drove deeper into the night, I noticed something unusual. My headlights caught movement on the side of the road, a figure standing there. It was a woman, dressed in a long white dress that seemed to shimmer in the light. She looked lost, her hair cascading over her shoulders, obscuring her face. I slowed down, hesitating. "Do you need help?" I called out, but she remained silent, staring at the ground. Something about her made my heart race, but I couldn't just leave her there. I pulled over and stepped out of the truck. "Hey, are you okay?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. As I approached, I could see that she was barefoot, her feet dirty and scratched. I'm lost," she said, her voice soft and shaky. "Where are you trying to go?" "Home," she replied, her eyes finally meeting mine. They were hollow, devoid of life. My gut twisted with unease, but I offered to give her a ride. "You can sit in the cab. I'll take you somewhere safe." She hesitated, glancing back at the dark woods behind her, then nodded slowly. I helped her into the truck, and as I slid back into my seat, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. "Where are you coming from?" I asked, trying to spark a conversation. "Just wandering," she said, her gaze fixed on the road ahead. "I'm trying to find my way back." I glanced at her, the hairs on the back of my neck standing on end. "Back where?" She opened her mouth to speak, but then fell silent. The truck's interior felt cold, despite the warmth of the night air outside. I turned up the heat, but it didn't help. As we drove further down the road, I noticed that the trees seemed to close in around us. The moon hung high, casting an eerie glow over everything. "How far is it to your home?" I asked, hoping for some direction. "Just a little further," she said, her voice barely a whisper. Minutes passed in tense silence. I could feel the weight of her gaze on me, and I couldn't help but glance over occasionally. Each time, she was staring straight ahead, her face expressionless. Suddenly, the radio crackled, and a static-filled voice interrupted the silence. "You shouldn't be driving alone out here. It's not safe." I froze, my heart pounding. "What did you say?" "Just drive," she replied, her voice low and urgent. I did as she instructed, my mind racing. The shadows outside seemed to grow darker, and I could swear I heard whispers floating through the air, mingling with the rustle of leaves. I turned onto a dirt road that seemed to lead nowhere, but she urged me on. Just a little further. The road grew bumpier, the trees pressing in around us. Suddenly, she turned to me. "Stop here." I slammed on the brakes, my tires screeching against the gravel. "What are we doing here?" "This is my home," she said, pointing to a dilapidated cabin that had been hidden in the woods. It looked abandoned, with broken windows and a sagging roof. "You can let me out now." Unease settled in my stomach. "Are you sure this is the right place?" "Yes," she insisted, her tone leaving no room for argument. "This is where I belong." I hesitated, but finally nodded. "All right, but are you sure you don't want me to call someone for you?" "No, I'm fine," she said, her eyes boring into mine. I opened the door and stepped outside, my heart racing as I watched her climb out of the truck. "You take care now," I called after her. As she walked toward the cabin, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was watching something unnatural unfold. I watched her until she reached the porch, then turned to head back to my truck. Just as I was about to get in, I heard a loud crash from behind me. I whipped around to see the cabin door swinging open, and then she stepped back out. Her expression was different, twisted, almost angry. "You shouldn't have come here," she shouted. My heart raced as I stumbled backward. "What's happening?" Suddenly, a group of shadowy figures appeared behind her, creeping out of the woods like wraiths. They surrounded her, their faces obscured by darkness. "Leave now," she screamed, and I could hear the terror in her voice. I sprinted back to my truck, adrenaline coursing through my veins. I jumped inside, fumbling with the keys as I desperately tried to start the engine. "Come on, come on!" Just as the engine roared to life, I glanced back at the cabin. The woman was gone, replaced by the dark figures that now stood silently on the porch, their hollow eyes fixed on me. I slammed the gear into drive and sped away, not daring to look back. The whispers echoed in my ears, growing louder with each mile I put between myself and that cursed place. As I drove, I tried to rationalize what had just happened. Maybe it was all in my head, a trick of the light and shadow. But deep down, I knew better. Days passed, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I told my fellow drivers about the woman on the road, but they all dismissed my story as the ramblings of a man who'd been driving too long. One night, a week later, I found myself on the same stretch of road again. The memories still fresh in my mind. I could feel the tension in the air, a sense of foreboding hanging around me. As I approached Dead Man's Curve, I slowed down, half expecting to see her standing there again. But the road was empty, just as it had been before. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that she was out there, waiting. I passed the spot where I had picked her up and glanced at the woods. The trees seemed to watch me, their branches swaying eerily in the wind. That's when I heard it, a soft, mournful whisper echoing through the night. "Help me, please." I froze, my heart pounding. The voice was familiar, haunting. I strained to listen, but the whispers faded into silence. I didn't stop driving that night. I kept my foot on the gas, racing past the memories that threatened to drown me. But even as I sped away, I knew that the road would always remember her, just as I would. The darkness may have claimed her, but I would never forget the night I picked up the lost soul on the highway. Sometimes, I wonder if she's still wandering, searching for a way home. I passed the spot where I had picked her up and glanced at the woods. The trees seemed to watch me, their branches swaying eerily in the wind. That's when I heard it, a soft, mournful whisper, echoing through the night. "Help me, please." I froze, my heart pounding. The voice was familiar, haunting. I strained to listen, but the whispers faded into silence. I didn't stop driving that night. I kept my foot on the gas, racing past the memories that threatened to drown me. But even as I sped away, I knew that the road would always remember her, just as I would. The darkness may have claimed her, but I would never forget the night I picked up the lost soul on the highway. Sometimes I wonder if she's still wandering, searching for a way home. I've spent over a decade driving trucks across America, but one night stands out in my mind more than the rest. It was a cold evening in November, and I was on the last leg of a long haul from Texas to California. The sun had long since set, and the desolate highway stretched out before me like an endless black ribbon, illuminated only by my headlights and the stars above. As I drove, the isolation weighed on me. I had my radio tuned to a country station, but the static made it hard to focus. I glanced at the clock on my dashboard. 2:47 a.m. The world outside felt eerily quiet, as if time itself had slowed down. I passed through a stretch of road known among drivers as the Phantom Highway. It was notorious for strange sightings and accidents, and seasoned truckers told stories of lost souls wandering the road at night. I never believed in ghost stories, but something about that stretch always made me uneasy. Just as I was about to reach the infamous mile marker, I noticed something on the side of the road, a flickering light. I slowed down, curiosity getting the better of me. As I got closer, I could see it was a small campfire, and next to it stood a woman dressed in white. I pulled over, unsure of what to think. "Hey there," I called out, rolling down my window. "Are you all right?" The woman looked up, her face illuminated by the flickering flames. Her hair was disheveled, and her eyes were wide with fear. "Please, help me," she said, her voice trembling. "I need a ride." Something in her tone sent a shiver down my spine. I couldn't shake the feeling that I should drive away, but the kindness in me wouldn't let that happen. "Where are you headed?" I asked. "Just up the road," she replied, pointing into the darkness. "I got lost. My friends, they left me." Against my better judgment, I unlocked the passenger door. "All right, get in. It's not safe out here." As she climbed into the truck, I couldn't help but feel uneasy. There was something off about her. She was too quiet, her eyes darting around as if she expected something to jump out at her. I dismissed the feeling and focused on the road. "Do you know where your friends are?" I asked, trying to make conversation. They're probably looking for me," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "They shouldn't have left me behind." The longer we drove, the more I felt the weight of her silence. I glanced at her out of the corner of my eye. She seemed lost in thought, staring blankly ahead. Suddenly, my headlights caught a reflection in the distance, something large and dark blocking the road. I slammed on the brakes, barely avoiding a collision. "What the hell?" I exclaimed, peering through the windshield. In front of us stood a massive, dilapidated truck, its engine smoking and its hazard lights blinking. It was abandoned in the middle of the road. "Stay here," I said, but she nodded slowly, her eyes wide with fear. I stepped out of the truck, my breath visible in the chilly air. The abandoned truck had no driver, no sign of life. As I walked around it, a sudden chill washed over me. The air felt thick, oppressive. I turned back to my truck and saw the woman had exited as well, standing a few feet away, staring at something behind me. "Hey, get back in the truck," I yelled, my heart racing. But she stood there, frozen, her face pale as she pointed toward the dark trees lining the highway. "Look." I turned around and felt my stomach drop. Emerging from the shadows were figures, ghostly shapes, gliding silently toward us. My instincts kicked in, and I bolted back to the truck. "Get in, now!" We scrambled into the cab, and I fumbled with the keys, my hands shaking. The figures drew closer, their faces obscured, but I could sense their anger, their desperation. "Drive! Drive!" she screamed. I started the engine and slammed the gear into drive, the tires spinning on the gravel. I took off, the headlights cutting through the darkness as I fled from the eerie figures. As we sped away, I glanced at her. What the hell was that? "They're angry," she said, her voice trembling. "They want something." I glanced in the rearview mirror, but the figures were gone. "What do you mean?" "They want to know what happened to them," she replied, her gaze fixed on the road ahead. "They were like me, lost." I couldn't make sense of what she was saying. "What do you mean, like you?" "I didn't mean to end up on this highway. I didn't want to get left behind," she whispered, tears welling in her eyes. "I thought I could find my way back." The air in the truck grew heavy, and I felt an overwhelming sense of dread. "You're not one of them, are you?" She turned to me, her expression suddenly cold. "I was lost, just like them." The truck's headlights illuminated a sign for a rest area ahead, and I decided to pull in. I needed a break from the tension. I parked and got out, leaning against the truck to catch my breath. The night was still, the stars shining brightly above us. The woman stepped out and stood a few feet away, her face illuminated by the faint light from the rest area. "I didn't mean for this to happen," she said softly. "What are you talking about?" I asked, my heart racing. "I was supposed to stay with my friends. I got lost when I tried to find my way back." A chill ran down my spine. "Are you saying you're dead?" "I didn't mean to leave them. I thought I could find my way home." The weight of her words sank in, and I took a step back. "You can't be serious." Suddenly, the wind picked up, howling through the trees, and the atmosphere shifted. I felt a presence around us, and the hair on my arms stood on end. "Please," she begged, her voice shaking. "Help me find them." I hesitated, the fear gripping my heart. "How? I can't help you." "I can't move on until I do," she said, her eyes pleading. I turned away, panic coursing through me. "I can't do this. I need to go." "Please don't leave me," she cried, desperation lacing her voice. But I couldn't take it anymore. I rushed back to the truck, fumbling with the keys. I climbed into the cab and slammed the door shut, locking it tight. I glanced back at her, and she stood there, staring at me with hollow eyes, her expression now one of sorrow. "You're leaving me," she said softly. "I'm sorry," I shouted, my voice cracking. I started the engine and drove away, my heart racing as I left her behind. The darkness enveloped me, but I could still feel her presence lingering in the air. For miles I drove in silence, the haunting memory of that night etched into my mind. I thought about how many others had faced the same fate. Lost souls wandering the roads, searching for something they could never find. As dawn broke and the first rays of sunlight crept over the horizon, I pulled over at a diner, needing to catch my breath. I stepped inside, ordering coffee to steady my nerves. As I sat there, I overheard a conversation at the counter between two truck drivers. "Did you hear about the woman on the Phantom Highway?" one of them said. "They say she was left behind by her friends, still searching for them after all these years." My heart sank as I listened, realizing I had encountered more than just a ghost. She was a lost soul, trapped between worlds, still longing for a connection she could never have. That day, I vowed never to drive that stretch of road again. I couldn't shake the feeling that somewhere out there, she was still waiting, still searching, and I would always carry her memory with me.